Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach, and today we're going to be discussing about creating personal brands. Now, why are personal brands important? You might be sitting and listening saying that, but I don't want to create a personal brand. I think that the very fact that you have a name, that you have a personality is a personal brand. Now you might as well double down on it and understand how you can create this and create a unique sense or an aspect of yourself for the world to consume, because they are going to brand you whether you like it or not. And we have a very special guest with us. We have Karthik Srinivasan, who has written a book on creating personal brands on social media. And I want to know more about it. So Karthik, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Thank you so much. Great to be on the show, Ashdin.
Karthik, we just finished doing a podcast on advertising and habits. Now, this podcast is about understanding personal brands. Like, what has been your story with personal brands?
So I started thinking about personal brands and social media the minute I joined social media. That was probably the late 2010s. That is around 2008 and 2009. That's when social media started becoming reasonably interesting in our lives. For
Hmm,
context, Twitter was launched in 2006. Facebook went public beyond the colleges in the US in 2006. That was a year, that was almost like a path-breaking year when social media became mainstream beyond the MySpace of the world, which existed pre-Facebook time.
correct.
And
Were
I
you ever
joined
on
much.
MySpace and any
No,
of
no, no,
that?
I was
No.
not. I wasn't. I was actually blogging from 1999 onwards, but not
Oh,
on
wow.
social media per se. I was one of the earlier bloggers. Besides, I still blog actually. I still blog weekly, every day kind of stuff. So I was not
Do
on
you know
social
how
media
many
per se.
blogs you've ever written? Do you have a total count?
Many, 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 because I have a weekly music blog. I started it in 2005, and I'm still writing weekly new music reviews for various film music, film songs across all languages in India. I still do it. I used to do full album reviews, but these days nobody releases albums in one go. It's singles after
Correct.
singles after singles. So I just do a weekly podcast. That's a habit for me, as a weekly habit. I listen to at least about 150 new songs every week. I pick and choose the top 10 or 15 that really appeal to me. And I am a complete music noob. I have no training
Oh,
at all.
wow.
My expressions are common man expressions. I like this because of this sound, this singer, that singer. That's how I write. But people seem to get value from it. I also get value from it to know what to listen to when I'm bored. So I keep making the playlist on Spotify and YouTube that I do. That's a hobby. Another quirky hobby that I've been doing, it's also a habit, is I started a blog in 1999 which tracked music plagiarism in Indian film music. Which Hindi song or which
Oh.
Tamil song, which Telugu song was copied from which international song. It used to
Hmm.
be a quirky niche blog in 99 till about 2010s. And then YouTube came into the picture and everybody started uploading both original and copied version on YouTube. And I stopped
Hmm.
doing it after, say, 2012, 2013. But that blog still exists. You can listen
Hmm.
to snapshot of the original and the copied one, and you can gawk and say, "My God, they copied it left right. Kya ho raha hai?" So that happened, and I blog on
Inspired.
blog on PR, Corpcom, social media, advertising campaigns for about 10, 12 years. I've been blogging almost every day.
Fantastic. So that's been your personal the
No,
blogging. Then after
actually,
that?
yeah, the fact is, I did not start all this from a personal branding point of view. I had something to express, so I used to write them on the blog. That's the only context I wrote them. But when I joined social media, that's when I actually noticed that if you give the power to talk to the world, to every single individual in the world, and here there is a point where I'd like to make. Nobody thinks that you're talking to the world when you're tweeting something, but that's exactly what's happening. There are a million people waiting to read your tweet. But all you see is 500 people follow me, so only 500 people see my tweet. But that's not the case. It can potentially go to a million people, is a point which most people completely miss. They don't see the number of audience at all. They only think about 500, 400 people will see my tweet, or less than that, maybe 100 people will see my tweet. But that's not the case at all. It can go places, is the point. But if you give every individual the power to talk to the world, it has two ramifications. One, it can go completely wrong, or it can go completely right and people could think something specifically good about you. And if you do it again and again consistently, that's the perception people will take with you, particularly strangers who don't know you at all. So I actually use an analogy in my coaching sessions where I say that imagine yourself to be living in a house with 100 windows. If all the 100 windows are open and you go about living your life inside the house, the people outside who are strangers to you, because the people who know are living with you inside the house, people outside who are strangers to you, they will form perceptions depending on which of the 100 windows you pass by. You pass by that and they will form perception. Now imagine if you shut 96 windows and open only 4 windows. Their perception will be based only on the 4 windows open that you are passing by. So my objective is to help people find those 5 or 6 or 7 or 4 windows to selectively open and create positive perceptions about yourself in life. And then immediately people ask me saying, but there are still 90 windows which are closed. Are you not wanting to talk about that at all? Of course, don't talk about that at all. You are a private person. You don't have to live your life 24 by 7 on a video stream at all. You choose the best of you to showcase to the world. Of course, if the world wants to work with you or meet you, you need to live up to what you're showcasing. Because if there is a big difference between what you've showcased and what you are in real life, things are going to come crashing down. So it has to be based on your own personality.
So you said so much right now. Just to unpack it a little bit, you said that, one is that you showcase your best 4 windows.
Yep.
Right. So that is one typical criticism that social media keeps getting, right? So you're only seeing the best of the world. You're not seeing what they're passing through and all of that.
Actually, it's branding 101. When you're trying to brand a product, you don't actually publish the entire product brochure. You pick 2 or 3 highlights and showcasing. If you want to buy this phone, the screen is really good, battery is very good, so buy the phone. But there is 100 more things about this phone which is very, very good. You don't necessarily talk about it because people have the mind space and memory only for the top 2 or 3, 4 things. So that's what I asked them to recommend. And the second thing that you're going to ask me, please ask, I will answer that also.
Which is?
Most people think that if I'm only showcasing the 4 things again and again in my life, for instance, I'm interested in things like, say, music or communications or social media, advertising, all this stuff. If I'm showcasing only that alone, what about my other interests that I don't showcase? Which is perfectly fine. It's a choice you make, basically. What you showcase, what you don't showcase, a choice you make. If somebody finds out that I'm also interested in art, but I don't talk about it online at all, so what? Big deal.
Interesting. And when you typically work with your clients, right, you were saying that these are people who are CEOs of companies, MDs of companies, and you convince them that they should have an online presence. They should have that personal branding in social
Not
media.
that they already have an online presence, because this is a big problem actually, because social media is free. For instance, if social media is paid, like for instance, if you're choosing between which OTT platforms to subscribe versus which social media platform to join, with OTT platforms, everything comes at a cost, either a monthly cost or an annual cost. So you do a cost benefit analysis. Should you subscribe to Netflix, Prime, Sony Live, Z5, Sun Network, etc.? And then you look at saying what's the content bank in each, how often new movies come, what kind of content that comes of interest to you. If I'm interested more in, say, science fiction, I would pick certain platforms, etc., etc. I am doing all that kind of questioning only because there is a cost involved. If all of them were free, I would subscribe to every single platform that is there, which is what's happening on social media platforms. Every single platform is free. The premium version of LinkedIn, you don't ever need it in your life unless you are a recruiter or a marketer. For normal people, free version is perfectly fine for the rest of our lives or till brand LinkedIn exists. Every single platform is free. When something is free, you are the product being sold. You know this exactly. This is an adage for the ages actually. So this is what happens. Because everything is free, we try everything. I mean, I'm sure we would have tried Snapchat, we would have tried TikTok when it was alive, we would try LinkedIn, etc. But we stick to 1 or 2 based on our comfort factor, where our friends are, where we seem to get more likes, reactions, and engagement. We stick to 1 or 2. But that's not the case with OTT because there is a cost, which is a filter. That's the filter that first goes. But because it's free, we try everything. Nobody teaches us what to do on those platforms. It's monkey see, monkey do. We look at what others do, we repeat them. If something works for something, it should work for us also, and we try this. So all the people that I try to coach and train, they're already on all the platforms. They're not using it, but they've signed up. They have a platform. They have a handle which is static. They have not tweeted for the last 2 years. Their last post on LinkedIn was 6 months ago. They're all there. They just don't know what to do and how and why to do on all these platforms. I try to add that meaning and layer and make it into a daily habit or at least a weekly habit of sorts. But they need they need me to convince, why should I spend 15 minutes on LinkedIn every week to write something or comment on somebody's post? What do I get out of them? That's what I try to help them.
Interesting. Now, there are people who are listening to this podcast, people who are homemakers, for example, college students, and they're wondering, why should I be creating a personal brand? What are your thoughts on that?
Excellent. You mentioned a homemaker. I know a homemaker from Bangalore. Her name is Subhashini. She has a handle on Twitter called Neelavanam, Neelavanam. Very, very interesting personality online, but for a very specific reason. For instance, if she's a homemaker and she talks about what she cooked, what she did every day, it would be interesting to a very small set of audiences. I mean, it will still be interesting, but small set of audiences who like the slice of life tweets from a homemaker in Bangalore. That's about it. But she actually started something called garden art, hashtag garden art. About 5 or 6 years ago, she started it. She has a garden and she picks up random things from her garden, like a leaf here or a few flowers here or a twig here and all that stuff, puts it on a piece of paper and completes them in the form of an art. It is
Lovely.
fascinating. It's fascinating. It's very beautiful. If you just go to Twitter and search for hashtag garden art or her handle also, you would find tons and tons of stuff that she has done over the years. It was so much that, I mean, it was so popular that she actually published a book. It was actually a diary or a note taking book where one page is her art, another page is people to take notes. She published it
Hmm.
as a book itself. That's her
Fantastic.
passion, which turned into a book. Now people ask her on very important days like a Ganesh Chaturthi or a Republic Day Independence Day, hey, what are you planning to do for Ganesh Chaturthi? Like they ask a brand, what is your topical creative on the day? They ask her. She says something, she puts something, and it goes massively viral. Now just imagine from a person who's just a homemaker, she's a homemaker from Bangalore who's the owner of Garden Art. She has carved an identity for herself more than just who she was earlier, just a homemaker. She is a garden art creator. And that's an identity that's worth living with. Actually, it's fantastic. And people actually recognize, oh, you are the garden art founder. It's not a company. It doesn't make money, but it gives her an identity. And it's so beautiful to look at. That's the kind of identity that you can build for yourself within what you're interested in your life. But most people don't think it's worth talking about at all, quite sadly.
So, how do you make it something worth talking about? Like, how do you start that trigger or that process for somebody?
So basically, the first thing is the brand definition. You need to define the
Okay.
brand first. You need to understand what you want to stand for. Most people are starting on, I mean, on all platforms thinking this is the kind of audience I will talk to. For instance, if I am a office going person and I'm in the finance space, I would probably think I would address finance professionals and I will make sense to them. I will talk insights to them. Or if you are a sports coach, you will see that I will attract sports interested fans and talk to them. Social media, you can't curtail the audience to any specific groups at all. It's a whole world that can potentially see you. People who are interested will stay. People who are not interested will not stay or unfollow, whatever it is. So instead of trying to talk to a particular audience, which is more appropriate for closed groups, the groups would have a predetermined tag saying this group is meant for this kind of interest alone. And then when you talk about it, it makes sense. But social media is a broadcast channel, open channel. So instead of trying to contort yourself to saying, I will speak only to these people, rest can go to hell, you actually first start with a brand definition saying, what do I want to be remembered for? What do I want to be associated with? Those points come from your personality, your education, your work process, your work profile, everything put together. It's both professional and personal. So I help with the
What do
brand
I want to
definition
be
first.
known for? What do I want to be associated with? What do
Associated
I
with.
want
Exactly. Known
known
for,
for and
associated
associated
with. Exactly. Those two
with?
things. And it's a list that you make. The first time I ask people to make this list, the more senior they are very reticent. They don't add anything at all. Then I poke them, cross question them. Then all the interest comes in saying, I've been playing badminton for the past 15, 20 years. There it comes. Okay, that's a habit and you are interested in it. I've been running all kinds of big marathons for the past 5 years. There it is. Things are coming. And you could be a CEO, all that kind of people. And they would say that I have actually been trekking for the past 5 years. There it is. There are things which are coming, which are interesting. And then I make a list and I help them prioritize the top 5 or 6 that is most important to them that they want to be known for, associated with. These are the 5 windows to open in their houses. And then the most important thing is that's just part one. That is, you just define something. Now you need to talk about it consistently over a period of time. You can't just say once every 6 months you talk about your running interest, or once every 6 months you talk about your interest in hiring or brand leadership or something. You need to do it more and more often. Because if you talk about it 10 times, people are likely to see only 2 posts of yours because that's how the timelines work with their algorithms and complications. So you need to talk consistently. For consistency, you need a habit in your everyday life. And that habit is not about sharing. Habit is more about reading first. I always recommend saying read 10x more than you share. The more you put inside, the more expressions can come out. And it's like health basically. What goes in, what goes out. What goes in is as important as what goes out, basically. So that's how we try to build a practice. So one of the most important part in the workshop is building content pipelines. Content which is relevant to your brand should come to you. You need to build a pipeline so that it comes to you. These days, we just leave it for complete serendipity and chance. We just think, aa jayega, somewhere, if I'm interested in that news, somewhere I will get it. We stopped buying all kinds of magazines. We stopped buying all kinds of newspapers. Most people don't even read newspapers. That habit is also gone from the morning because news keeps coming all through on phones, on InShots and LinkedIn timeline, Twitter timeline, but they're not predictable. And we waste so much time scrolling up, like, scrolling up, and then after half an hour, say, what did I spend my time on? So I help them with pipelines on their phone and laptop, saying, build pipelines so that relevant information comes to you. For the first month, don't say anything at all. Just fill your head with more information and then think. Observe what's happening. Things will automatically flow. The more you put inside your head, the more perspectives, opinions will come. No, that doesn't seem right. This seems very nice. I want to talk about it more often. That's how I help them with that habit quite literally.
And then what would be the next step? So now you got the pipeline coming in. So
Yep.
information is now coming into
Yes.
the person.
Yep.
They have enough stuff to talk about and do. We're going to take a quick break. See you on the other side. Welcome back. All right, let's jump into the conversation. When do they choose which platforms to be on?
That's the third part. The first is basically brand definition. Second is building the
Right.
pipelines. The third is articulation. You need to articulate it in a way that is appropriate to your tone and voice and to the platform. For instance, on Twitter, the articulation is very short and crisp. On LinkedIn, it can be longer. Most platforms allow video articulation also. So you can choose video articulation. You can choose a selfie video to talk about a topic also. So those there. And then not just the articulation of which platform, it's also how. How is very important. If you don't present it in an interesting format, you just write it in a very dry, boring manner, nobody is going to read to you. So I help them with the how also. So basically I say start with a personal anecdote so that people feel warm into that, saying, okay, he's like me or she's like me, she's talking about an experience, and then go on to the topic. Those kind of nuances I add. Then there are some handy practical tips on how to deal with trolls, how to deal with negativity, how to deal with counterpoints, all those kind of, because that's something that most people are scared of. They think that, Karthik, I'm actually a very senior leader in this bank. If I say something and half a dozen people don't like what I've said, what do I do? I will actually become very unlike leader in my bank. That's not the point. There'll be hundreds of people who always like and don't like what you're trying to say. Deal with it, and proactively deal with it when you're writing. Use the right words. Don't use extreme words, extreme negativity words, which will induce more people to point out saying, hey, this guy said it sucks. Why did it say? Don't say that. Just say, I'm disappointed with it instead of saying it sucks. So think about all those things. Think at least 5 or 6 times about how it might be perceived by audiences that are not familiar with you. You always think, no, 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 all people know me and how can they think about it like me? But it's being read by strangers. So I help them with all these hands-on tips, and then they are slightly more confident saying, mujhe try karna hai. I will try more actively.
Interesting. When it comes to choosing the platform that you want to be on, right? Like, so for example, I am not on Twitter at all. That Instagram is a large part of where all my posting happens. I'm not there on Twitter at all because I was like, what's the point of being on Twitter? So how do you decide what platforms to be on? And this is me doing my thing. I've got obviously no professional help in this. And so how would I start thinking, should I be on Twitter? Should I be on this? Should I be doing this?
There is no right or wrong answer to it. It's to some extent about individual personalities. For instance, if you look at Anand Mahindra, he's got about 7 to 8 million followers on Twitter. But do you know how many followers or connections he has on LinkedIn? Zero. He has a placeholder profile on LinkedIn made by his Corpcom team. He doesn't care about LinkedIn. Or in other words, he can afford not to care about LinkedIn. He's Anand Mahindra, the CEO of an organization. But
no one's asking for a job. Exactly. I mean, no one's giving him a job.
Correct. He doesn't care at all. He doesn't care either way. But the point is, he has made peace with Twitter to be his predominant form of expression on social media. That's about it. That's his channel. He doesn't have the patience of a LinkedIn. He likes Twitter as a platform because it's live. It's a very fast timeline. Things keep moving very, very fast. If you see something trending now, the next half an hour, it won't be trending at all. And things change. But LinkedIn is a very slow timeline. things from past 5 days also keeps coming on my timeline occasionally. So it's a very slow timeline. Facebook is a slow timeline. Instagram is somewhere in between actually. Things come and then at some point it ends, saying you have reached the end of all that new posts that you have seen at all. You said you are more naturally tuned to Instagram. I'm completely not tuned to Instagram because Instagram forces me to think visual first. I am actually a text first, words first person. So I like Twitter and LinkedIn because it's words first. I don't need to contort myself to put an image just to be able to say something. But for most people, Instagram works very smoothly. They don't have to form words at all. Just an image karo, I mean, like two, three hashtags, job done, finished. I prefer thinking about what I am writing, which words to choose, how to do the sentence formation and all that beautification, and then I post something, which doesn't help at all on Instagram because no matter what I choose, I still need to put an image, and that's what people see first, unfortunately. So it depends on what your natural orientation in terms of expression is. The art of expression is what matters. So don't feel forced to join Twitter at all. Twitter is a very different, very busy,
Hmm.
chaotic kind of a platform. Unless you are naturally oriented towards that, it will be very difficult for you to even move on. But there are safer ways to use Twitter. For instance, one of the lesser known tools of Twitter is called lists. You can make a list on Twitter. For instance, if you're interested in a particular topic, for instance, if you're interested in, say, healthy eating as a topic, you can select 10, 15, 20 people who talk about healthy eating often inside a list and only consume Twitter through that list alone. Don't look at the larger timeline at all, which is chaos and nonsense. You look at that alone, your experience on Twitter will be far more fruitful.
Interesting. Yeah, because in my experience, Twitter was just ranting, 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 right? I was just like, where do I find positivity in all of this? It was
Correct.
difficult at that point of time.
It's tough. Yeah.
So as a result, I said,
But all this ranting happens on LinkedIn too these days, unfortunately.
that's the thing, right? Like negativity sells so fast
Yeah.
that that is now what a large part of social media is devolving into. Like I was
It
just, in
is.
fact, this morning I was watching YouTube and I was scrolling, and all I think three videos had the word things that you should be doing that you are not. And like,
Very clever. That's what we'll be
nah,
naturally interested in. Yeah, correct. हाँ मुझे भी
correct,
देखना
because
है.
should equals to guilt,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You should be doing this, you're not
correct,
doing this, chalo. So guilt
correct.
instantly is defined into the title itself.
That is true.
And they're
Guilt
just,
tripping. Yeah,
and that's
FOMO.
the
Yeah,
FOMO,
yeah,
exactly. And that's what they're trying to pull out in us. So I
correct.
was just like, in fact, throughout the social media, when we put our platforms up, I think it'll be also very cognizant of the way that we are using it, right?
Yeah,
And the way that we are showcasing ourselves in this format. Right? Are
absolutely,
we trying to give people FOMO? Are we not
absolutely.
trying to give people FOMO? How do we work on that? And
We
maybe you
really
might be
can't
successful,
actually.
not.
No, we really can't
Hmm.
actually because the most of the people who consume the content that we put out are strangers. They don't know us personally. I mean, they have probably never met and probably never will meet at all. They don't know the context with which we write anything at all. So it's very difficult to pre-guess what will be FOMO, what will affect people negatively. As much as possible, even when I'm trying to offer a negative point of view on an ad, I try to avoid all extreme words and try to be as reasonable and practically useful as possible. Instead of trying to say, I hated this ad, I say, this part of this ad didn't work for me for so and so reason. So that at least somebody doesn't blame me saying, why is he going on a negative rant of that ad at all? So I'm very conscious of it and try, but it doesn't work most of the times. Some people always keep on pouncing saying, you don't like that ad, you hate all Indian ads. Then I am forced to showcase saying here are the half a dozen Indian ads that I totally loved. Please read this. क्या करें?
My favorite was somebody asked me, what are your top five favorite books? And I sent a picture of my top five favorite books. And one person said, it is very interesting that you do not have a single female in your author's list.
अब क्या करें?
And now, like, I'm thinking about it. Then I look, no, and I reply back saying, no, book number 4 has Catherine written there. Catherine is a woman. I mean, like, firstly, you're blind.
When you're making a wrong claim, क्या करें? What to do?
How do you deal with trolls?
It's a tough thing, but over time that I've been on the online, particularly on Twitter, where trolls are more vicious than any other platform, I've learned a couple of things that there's no point responding to somebody who may be a troll. But I first need to do that filter whether that person is a troll or not. My first filter, if there is no actual name and there is only anonymous handle, anonymous photographs that you can't make out an individual. The basic filter is if you can name search them on LinkedIn and find out who that individual actually is, not necessarily a troll. That's it. But if I miss that filter, I don't engage at all. No response, nothing. I don't even care, basically. And if they use an abuse, I block them immediately. There's no point engaging because that's how we will behave on the road, right? If somebody that we don't know actually says blah 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 etc. with an abuse, we move away from that person. We don't engage with that person. So why do that? Why do anything different on Twitter? That's number one. Number two, if I'm able to find a name, there is a human being, there is a person on LinkedIn, then I engage as reasonably as I can. But after about 5 or 6 kind of replies and conversations to and forth, if they don't see something that I'm trying to say, or if they miss a point that I'm trying to do persistently, I stop engaging. But I also mention, can I please mute you because this is not working at all? So at least they should know that I'm planning to mute and it's not as if I'm ignoring them. That's about it. Those are my two filters basically.
I think that last step is very nice. I'm thinking that, okay, now enough of this. I'm going to mute you so that there's more that I want to talk
actually very
about.
polite. Can I please mute you is what I ask. I don't say I will mute you. I'll block you and all this. Can I please mute you and move
because on
with
Twitter,
life?
every reply is a tweet, right?
Yeah, that's right. It is a tweet.
So that means people will be just seeing you replying to this one person.
Correct. Endlessly. Yeah.
Endlessly. Lovely. Karthik, how can people reach out to you? How can people get in touch with you? You have a new podcast that is coming out on IVM. In fact, two episodes already out. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Where can people find it?
The podcast is called The Advertisers Guide to the Galaxy. It's available on IVM, Spotify, Ghana, Raga, Apple Music, everywhere basically, wherever you get your podcast from. It's about ad campaigns from India predominantly and going deeper behind ad campaigns. Instead of just quick, short opinions, I like it, I don't like it, deeper behind what more can you see in this ad? What are the different perspectives that you can enjoy and appreciate in this ad? That's the basic objective behind the campaign. If you need to get in touch with me, I'm available on LinkedIn and Twitter.
LinkedIn and Twitter, what is your handle?
On Twitter, it's called Beast of Troll. It's a character from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And on LinkedIn, I'm just Karthik Srinivasan.
And where can I get your book?
Where is that available? It's available on Amazon.
Amazon? Perfect. All right. Karthik, thank you so much for coming on the Habit Coach podcast. I absolutely had a blast talking to you.
Same here. Very good time talking to you.
Thank you. Now, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am at Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. We have a brand new habit coaching online course, quizzes, videos, and a lot more on the website awesome180.com. So check it out now.